the job, like you said, a lot of practitioners will, make specific decisions or, be a different person in order to kind of save their jobs. And I think that's one thing that I really, really wanted to work in myself as a practitioner since I started. I'm like, I want to be able to be the most authentic self that I could be. So I'm not in that position of actually having to kind of walk on eggshells.
Yes, yeah.
Just for the sake of like the role.
Welcome to this episode with Ivi Casagrande. Ivi is a performance coach and sports scientist from Brazil who has worked at the top level in professional female soccer. She was recently part of the Brazil team at the 2023 Women's World Cup, and her current position is now interim coach for the Irish senior women's football team. She also leads the sports science department at Lewes Football Club here in Sussex, where I am. She's passionate about not only the holistic physical preparation of athletes, but also empowering young coaches in their own journeys in the world of sport. Through the mentorship she leads, Ivi shares her own journey and experiences to provide guidance for young coaches in order to help and support them in their own career. And this is another reason why I'm so excited to have Ivi come and talk about her ideas and her perspectives in performance sport. If you enjoy this episode, please leave a review on iTunes or Spotify platforms. By doing this, you'll actively help in spreading this content to practitioners that need it. I've really enjoyed this conversation and I'm sure you are going to. So without delaying you anymore, here's our conversation with Ivi Casagrande. Welcome to episode 4. Welcome, Ivi. Thank you so much for just being open to have this discussion. I'm really excited to see where it goes.
Excited to be here. Thank you.
And just for anyone listening, Ivi and I lived literally around the corner from each other, and we bumped into each other in the street earlier this year. And I've seen Ivi kind of obviously on social media, but we're practically neighbours, and so
crazy how the universe
it
happens.
Very much, very, very much. So you're the first female practitioner that I'm talking to and interviewing on this podcast, and I'm kind of especially excited because, like we spoke about a minute ago, the research that I've done has been solely on male practitioners, not because I believe female coaches have got an easier ride. They don't, but that's the lens that I've seen this through, and through my own lens, and so that's why I want to bring in kind of practitioners like yourself to give that other side of what's going on. Maybe if there are any nuances to female practitioner. But I suppose the first question, kind of what I'm leading with most people so far, is what were your inner drivers to get you into your career as a performance coach in sport?
Well, I started back in 2000. Probably 10 when I went to America to play football and study there. But I was a pre-med at the time. I wanted to go to medical school. I finished my bachelor's degree in 2014, and I was very unsure of the path that I wanted to take. Of course, medical school was something that I always dreamed as a kid, maybe because of society and kind of like where I grew up is almost like the big drops, right? The lawyer or, doctor, whatever it is. And always loved the science behind it, everything. And my mom had a condition, neurocysticercosis, when I was very young. So I wanted to be kind of a neuroscientist to understand what was happening with her. And that was my kind of drive. But then when I had a gap year after my studies in my bachelor's degree in California, I pretty much got all my stuff and put in my Nissan 1997 car, and then drove to California to just do a year of just exploring things and coaching kids, football, working in hospitals, working in cancer hospitals, interning in research projects and stuff like that. And I then realized, first of all, I wouldn't have the money to pay for medical school in America, being an international student. And the other part was I really missed the sport. I was actually trying to play pro in Europe back then, in the same time I was studying for the med school. And I just got a sports agent that stole my money and ran away. And then that kind of put things into perspective. And my visa was almost kind of running out in America. And then I had to make a decision. So the universe always helps in crazy ways. And I got an email when I was in the airport going back to Brazil. And I was very sad to be back because I didn't want to leave. But with my sports psychologist from when I played saying that there is a master's program in exercise physiology, and she wanted me to apply. So I was very interested. I applied for it, and then I went back to Ohio to the school that I graduated from to do the master's. And I fell in love with sports performance. I was teaching at the same time I was pursuing my master's and being a sports performance coach as an intern with the football team that I played. And then I fell in love with it. And I was like, it was almost like the closure that I needed, not as a player, but also a way for me to get that closure was to be able to help athletes to get the tools that I didn't have as a player, and be able to kind of turn that and create impact and try to be the best that I could in the field to push the women's game forward. And I never stopped since then.
Right. Yeah, you've been on a real, a real ride.
Yeah.
Kind of where you are. And strangely, my wife is, well, she went to, so you University of Ohio.
It's Ohio. It's Bowling Green State University, actually.
Okay.
Small town, Bowling Green, Ohio.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So kind of fast forward now to what you've obviously worked at so many different levels of soccer. Kind of really with this podcast and with these conversations, kind of, from what I've heard in my research, there's such a drive to keep chasing the next thing. So this progression in career, the next role, the next team, the higher team, better level athletes, all this kind of stuff. And so how, I guess, you have been successful in your career up until this date. How do you celebrate the accomplishments that you do? Can you celebrate them, or do you get pulled by the next thing? You don't really focus on. Yeah.
It's a very good question, because it was actually this past weekend. It was the first time that I forced myself to slow down, because I felt like probably the last 3-4 years, I was just on this freaking crazy roller coaster, going from one team to the other, going from one country to the other. And first of all, I haven't had time to process anything, or even celebrate. And I think that's where I was like, wow, when I think about it, I'm 32, I'm very young, and I've kind of been achieving everything I've always dreamed of in terms of being where I am. But at the same time, I have this feeling as a practitioner that I'm always in a rush, and I'm always kind of like going from the next thing to the next thing. And it was not until when I was back from the World Cup this year that I kind of stopped to think about what are my next steps? Like what do I want to go from here? And I think that was a very pivotal time for me this year, because for the first time, I think as a practitioner, I was able to be fully okay to say no to big opportunities from big roles, like in going back to full-time roles in big teams, or, and I was okay saying no to them, because I was like, what is my purpose in this field? Like, what am I doing? Like, and I realized that to the core of everything I do, there is a very big passion on development and women's development, for the women's football development mostly, but also for long-term development. And I think if I keep going from one thing to the other in terms of full-time roles and not being able to truly be able to get all the other projects that are very close to my heart, so like working with Lewes, developing their strategy from the ground up and kind of pushing the boundaries there to develop women's football, or work with FIFA and UEFA and big projects that will make that available for all nations around the world. So I need that flexibility to be able to do that, and to be able to be truly okay with it, and remove myself from that ego part of the big role, or the kind of like the status, and to be okay with that and say, you know what, like I am very clear on what my heart wants right now in terms of where I need to do. And in order for me to do that, I cannot give up those different roles that I have right now. So whatever comes to me, I'll do and say, okay, I can do this as long as I can, still be able to be flexible and work on these projects. Which for me, yeah, it was quite good reflection to do, and kind of a good place to finally be in. Because it just consumes you to the point that you just go from one place to another place, but then you're not very in sync with what you truly want.
I think that's so powerful what you just said. Connecting with your heart, connecting what you truly want to connect with your purpose. And to me, years ago, I'd say, well, what do you mean connecting with your heart? What do you mean? And to me, I'd be really interested to hear your perspective on that. For me, like my mind or our mind is constantly trying to weigh up options, this or that, this or that, this or that. My heart, how I know I'm connected to my heart is a lightness. It's a sense of feeling. It's not words. It's a feeling. This feels right.
Yeah.
And I wonder what was it, the fact, I guess to the backstory, you most of the team were let go after the World Cup. Was it that? Did that have a big effect on you, or what got you into sort of really? How have you got connected to that more intuitive sense and the idea of purpose?
Yeah, definitely. I think after the World Cup, it just made. I think the more that I'm in football, I think that you have to create like a tough skin and a separation almost to, because I'm the type of person that I'm very intense in terms of my like connection with people and to what I do. I'm very passionate about, and sometimes it's very hard for me to separate those things to the point that I give my all and I give everything. But then, we all know in sports, it's a brutal world. It's definitely brutal. So it doesn't matter, how good you can be on the pitch or how good you can impact in a lot of different ways. There's a lot of different things that you can control. And unfortunately that situation for me was kind of a pivotal point in terms of like, okay, I need to just be able to be a little bit more careful from if I'm following my own thing and not others people dreams or like I don't want to keep trying to solve other people's problems, but I need to solve first my own. Yes. And I think that's kind of like where I've always struggled with this, and not only my professional life, in my personal life, to almost kind of, and of course we can always talk about like traumas and kind of our past, and it kind of brought me into this place of where I have like almost like a personal duty to create solutions and make sure I connect with these people or institutions or whatever. So I was like, yeah, I just need to think about myself now. Like, and it was very hard for me to do that because I always think about others. I always think about others first. And that's when I realized if I am continuing to do that and kind of going from role to role, I'm going against my own values of actually long-term development, of actually bringing, something that is very close to my heart. So that's when I'm kind of like, okay, I really need to be specific in what projects I'm going to pick from. And it was not only until the last weekend that I actually completely removed all distractions to be able to force myself to actually process everything I've been going through the last 4 years, losses and and like not only in my personal life, but also in sports and things that I had to give up to, and all those things that, and to be grateful for everything that is kind of coming to me, even though there's a lot of challenges coming with it, but I'm very grateful that I'm in a position to be able to do that, to be able to have different projects, be able to feel at home somewhere. In Brighton, it's the first time that I actually feel like home in a place. And so I think that all kind of helped. But of course, I think the thing with Brazil and then in the World Cup, it was very hard for me to as a practitioner, as a as a person. But I think it was a good closure for me to say, I've done everything I could. I gave my all, and it's time to move on, and it's time for me to just think about myself first and
Right.
continue that journey.
Great. And kind of it brings me on to, I guess, I'd love to know this is a question I'm kind of asking most of the guests now, like, what's your definition of success for you? Because, if you look at Brazil, like the expectations versus, right, and I don't know what they are, but like the result of a major tournament, for example, or, I've spoken to coaches who've been fired, or how the athletes are doing, like if that's one measure, and I'm not to say that's not a measure to have in the picture, but I think if a common statement I've heard from coaches in the research would be, I've paraphrased of course, but I've supported athletes to reach tournament success or championship success, and I've waited with this emotional rush to hit, and it hasn't come. I thought, this is why I do what I do. And so they've pinned all their measure of success on the external benchmarks, but it's not been from them. And you kind of touched on it a minute ago. So yeah, what is your measure of success as a practitioner for you?
Yeah, it definitely changed over the years. I think when I was very new to the field, of course, all I thought about was results. All I thought about was like, if I do X, Y, and Z, I'm definitely going to get this. And it's not how it works. And I definitely learned the hard way that it's not. I mean, nobody really cares about what you do if you don't if you don't win, if you don't get results, and that's the brutal part of football. And I think that kind of allow me to have those reflections the last few years, and I think what you mentioned, the feelings, I think that what is to feel, what is that heart kind of feeling, and I think that's where the last few years I was able to actually feel that for the first time. And what I get, when do I get that, is when I'm able to empower my players and empower others, to truly give them everything they like are able to have access to be able to be at their best. And that's not only like physical performance, and it's more kind of using my own experiences as somebody in the world that been through whatever I've been through, to kind of help them go through whatever they are going through. And I think that feeling and that feeling of development, of coming to a place that has no resources, that have, the players have no resources or tools, and being able to be the person that kind of like teaches athletes, whatever it is, to be able for them to get that and move on with their lives without me. Because that's the point. I think that's where I think we as coaches, and I was like that when I just started, it's like, I want to be the best that I can. So then when I leave, they're going to be like, oh, I miss this coach. I want her back. And it's like, no, that's not the point. The point is like, can you give them the tools and kind of be in the present.
Right.
So then when you leave, they're able to do on their own and push the standards, because you gave them the standards, right, and you kind of like laid out and say, this is the standards that you need to be pushing for yourself. So then whoever comes after me, if they're not getting you to that standard, you're going to be able to go and say, you know what, this is my capability. This is how much I know that I can push, and I'm not getting that. So I need to push that standard. Right. So that for me is success. I think it's kind of being able to empower to that point of impact.
Empowerment. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I like that. kind of really resonates with me. And I think, yeah, just really, I guess, kind of from there, you've mentioned so many great things. I'm kind of, I guess, if you're thinking about your career and you've touched on a few elements, where then has been maybe one or the biggest struggle of your career so far? Kind of what has been like trying to get a bit lower and deeper into sort of well, like where has been your one of your most biggest struggles so far in your career as a practitioner?
Um, I think I to be honest, I think the 2, 3 years ago when I was at Brighton, women's, I think I was in a very terrible place mentally. My mental health was all over the place because I was just a workaholic. I mean, I still work a lot, but I think that I didn't have any balance whatsoever to the point that I had a huge panic attack that took me to the hospital. And then that was kind of like the time where, for the first time, I I thought, because I was in the survival mode for my entire life, I think, for kind of making through it. And, I left quite early from Brazil. I was 18. And then you just have to build that tough skin, because if you don't, like, I didn't want to go back to Brazil. So you don't have your family next to you. Sometimes it's just a very lonely journey that you kind of almost feel like you're invincible. And not like
Yeah.
you feel like you're invincible, but you have to be invincible,
Hmm.
because there's no other way that I'm going to make it through if I'm not, because nobody's going to do it for me. So I think that kind of carried over a lot of the years to the point that I couldn't handle anymore. And that's where, and I still struggle with that. I think I still kind of, sometimes I get into this very kind of methodical, objective path of everything that I do. Is like, as a coach, is like, I need to get here. What are the things that I need to get there? That I noticed that I was kind of worrying more about the future than living in the present. And that, I mean, this last few years, this past year too, like, I've been struggling with that. And now I'm finally realizing that I need to kind of take a step back and really live in the present and kind of stop that. But I think it's always kind of a learning curve. Everywhere I go, it's there's something that I struggle with, that makes me kind of, and that, I think that's what brings growth. But it's not comfortable, is it? Like, it's kind of like, every time I go through a different role or a different kind of phase of my life, it's kind of, all right, what do I need to get from this, and how do I need to move on from this, kind of autopilot mode. And I think that can happen quite easily when you're in the middle of all this, and especially as a consultant, I have about 4 to 5 different projects that I do at the same time, and it's very easy for you to you don't stop,
Right.
ever.
Yeah.
So I think that's still a learning process. But yeah, I think from 2021, post COVID, when I moved out of America in the middle of COVID and came to England, and I didn't really have time to process anything, until the last few years. So definitely, I think, kind of being stuck in the future, sometimes it takes a toll.
Yeah, for sure. Again, a common saying, like I'm stuck in my head,
Mm.
and so many coaches are thinking exactly that in the future, either thinking about stage of Olympic cycle, stage of season, development, career progression, whatever it is they're constantly in the future and not being present. And I suppose, like, and what do you have any practices, like whether it's on a daily basis, that helps you return to the center? And I say that because, one, I know you've come to a breath workshop that I led a while
Yeah.
ago, but for me, someone who used to dismiss when I was really in a pre 2015, I would dismiss anything to do with yoga.
Mm.
So limited in my perception of life. And anyway, my point is, since then, grief has put me on this journey, and kind of meditation, breath work, and various other practices that I do daily. Like life is, I still struggle in life, of course, but I can't imagine life without those anchors in my day,
Mm.
both in the morning and the evening. For me, that
Yeah.
just helped me so much. And so, yeah, my question is, have you got any practices that you lean on?
Yeah, I've been trying to be a little bit better with that. And I think the most tricky part is when I'm in camp or when I'm
Right.
traveling all the time, how can I be able to sustain that? And I think that's where I'm at right now, is like I need to be able to sustain that. But for me, social media is a big trigger, unfortunately. Like
Right.
it's part of what I do, and sometimes you have to do it. But I try to remove the triggers as much as I can, especially when I feel that my book is very full. So remove the triggers, and also have that time in the morning and before bed that I'm literally an hour to just have a clear mind, just to
Yeah.
kind of like, okay, this is my time to really not think about anything. And my mind goes 100 miles an hour every day, all day. So if I don't do that, and I think I try to go sauna and cold water immersion at least once, because I found that feeling that I get from going to a very deep cold water,
Yeah. Right.
and that feeling of like presence that you kind of feel your entire body kind of tingling. It's like, oh, that was the anchor that I needed, and it was the only thing I think I found nowadays to really like quiet my mind.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm still trying to figure out how I make this a little bit more consistent. But I think having that time to just not think about anything,
Mm-hmm.
not have any expectations of answering messages, answering
Right.
emails, and get that anxiety of like always having to,
Yes.
do something and reply to something. And
Yeah.
if I can remove that at least once a day, that gives me a little bit of clarity, and it puts me a little bit of a better mode. But I think what I found the last few months, and which I was a little bit kind of going towards, that it was a little bit dangerous, is almost kind of like I was obsessed with working out, obsessed with kind of
Right.
doing something as a distraction.
Yes. Yes.
And then I realized, what am I running from?
Yeah.
And I think that's when I'm like, okay, I need to slow it down, remove all distractions, and be with myself, and be okay with myself and my own presence. And that's hard. And it was very uncomfortable. But I'm slowly trying to do more of that, because it's very easy to just use the distractions to kind of get
Yeah.
through it.
So that resonates with me so much. I was addicted to exercise, and I knew better, and
Mm,
I was just training like a fool, like didn't know better, and like breaking myself into the ground and breaking my body literally, and I couldn't see it at the time, but
mm,
it was a numbing strategy. I thought I was the story I was telling myself is this: that I was training and I was fit and I was strong, I was just breaking myself, and I couldn't see it. I couldn't see it in the moment, and
mm.
I think it's so important that you've. It's great that you shared that, like over exercising, and I think that's an insidious, not with everyone, but that's kind of an insidious issue that's really hard to see
Yeah,
in practitioners.
yeah,
More obvious ones are alcohol, for example, or
yeah.
you kind of say social media. I'm in a fortunate position now. Like I don't work with athletes, but I work with coaches, obviously. But
Yeah.
I kind of see it as like my phone and my devices are like windows to the world. And so, like check my emails at 10 o'clock in the morning. I don't check anything before then. And I
Mm,
shut my phone down at 7:30, 8 o'clock at night.
yeah.
So I do have that. And I know I'm fortunate in that, but that has helped so much. Because like you said, even if you take just check my emails, once you've got someone's asking you for something, you read that.
Hmm.
It's that draw. And I would say, and you're perfect to speak on this. And I would say probably in major competitions or training camps, there's an element where, well, okay, that probably goes out the window. But then
Hmm.
when you come back into a normal environment, begin to reinstate those boundaries on yeah, that's just been my lived experience anyway. And
Yeah, exactly.
you've you've kind of touched a lot on growth, and what is self growth to you? What does it mean to you?
Mm,
I guess preempting that was,
yeah.
you know, um, many of the people I've spoken with perceive personal development They believe that they're doing personal development. This is where I was as well. Yet all of that development is solely focused on technical, being
Yeah.
a better practitioner,
Yeah.
upskilling, whether it's S&C, whether it's physiotherapy, whether it's physiology or data analysis, whatever it is.
Mm.
They're upskilling in that very niche skill set that they have, and which leaves this huge blind spot to them as a person. And you sound so self-aware, Evie, in the sense of all these patterns you're seeing, and to me, self-aware, it's not about being perfect. It's just see, oh, this is okay, this is
Yeah.
showing up, right, work on this.
Yeah.
So yeah, how do you see self-growth and CPD as well, actually, development?
Yeah, you're right. I think a lot of our society in this field, I think we think that professional development is mainly the technical side of things, and it's funny because I can see there's a big taboo of like actually going into like deeper practices like yoga or breath work. I think there's still a lot of like, even with players, athletes, if you like teach them that, they're like, this girl is like just likes the juju and whatever it is. Um, but it's something that I've been practicing a lot the last few years. And for me, and I think I mentioned that to you, I think one of my things that I've recognized is not giving enough love for myself to
Right.
myself. And I think just giving to people and giving my energy and all the time. And sometimes it's draining, like just to
Yes.
give. And I started to realize that I needed to kind of spend more time with myself and spend a little bit more time kind of learning about myself as a person and being okay. Like I said, when you're in autopilot, it's a lonely journey. And I was, I can easily say that a lot of the times I felt very uncomfortable just being on my own, just being like with myself
Yes.
and not doing anything. Is just like that constant drive for distraction. So I think once I realized that, I'm working very hard on kind of understanding a little bit of my patterns and kind of, because that will help me as a practitioner. Because
Yeah.
if I don't have those skills, because if you're in this industry, you have to understand that's a lifestyle that you, in order for you to sustain that in a healthy way, you have
Yes.
to be okay with being by yourself and being lonely sometimes and
Yes.
knowing yourself, because it is a lonely journey. Like, yeah, I travel a lot, and I don't. Sometimes I lose that sense of like having anchor and base.
Interrupt this conversation briefly, as the idea and talk around self-growth is one that's growing within elite sport. And so I want to draw your attention to the Practitioner Needs Analysis Coaching Program. The conversations in my research have shown clearly that 160 highly successful practitioners supporting some of the best athletes in the world have on one level achieved a great deal within high performance sport and academia. Yet on a much more personal level, many are quietly suffering to maintain the perception of being successful and happy. This is the inconvenient truth sitting just under the surface within our high performance environments. The cost of this ranges from divorce, absent parent, physical and mental illness, all of which contribute to limiting the performance impact we all strive so hard to achieve. The human element has been forgotten, with many top practitioners now finding ways to leave our beloved industry. My research process has spawned the services I now provide to support performance practitioners. Athletes have a vast array of options within their support network to help them thrive, optimize, and activate their full potential. But very little is currently aimed at offering this unique support for performance practitioners. This is where the Practitioner Needs Analysis Coaching Program fills that gap. The Practitioner Needs Analysis allows you to identify what qualities are most important for you to show up in your role, career, and life in your fullest expression. It provides an inner analysis that highlights the components of your life, giving you clarity on what is blocking you, how it's blocking you, and what you need to do to release those blocks. This guides you to tailor your goals and actions away from potential burnout, divorce, or illness, and instead towards one where you thrive as a practitioner and in your personal life. This guides you to tailor your goals and actions away from potential burnout, divorce, or illness, and instead towards one where you thrive as a practitioner and in your personal life. To find out more about the group and one-to-one options Men Behind Sport offers, visit www.menbehindsport.com or email me at richard@menbehindsport.com. Now, back to the conversation with Ivi Casagrande.
So yeah, I told you like in a week I'm gonna go and do my first kind of personal development trip with Altis, which I'm so excited about. And I know that it's not gonna be anything that is gonna be heavily technical, but it's more, first of all, the idea of being in a room full of amazing coaches that gets the bigger picture, you know. And I'm very fortunate from Dan Pfaff, who's been my mentor since the day one when I started coaching, to introduce me to people like Stu and Sophia Nefis, and I'm very excited for that because they get it, they know the bigger picture, and I think the every coach should be able to kind of start this personal journey and be a little bit more with more intent on their purpose, on their strategy, on not only strategy. We talk about strategy on, you know, what they're going to do with their teams, but also as their own strategy, like what do they want to achieve and how they're going to get there. So definitely I think self-growth for me has been evolving as I'm learning more about myself and being uncomfortable diving deeper into my traumas and my patterns, and like you said, being self-aware and self-regulation is a big thing that I try to teach my athletes a lot, is to be able to kind of understand without distractions, like how are you feeling, like what do you need, and how can we support and facilitate that to you, you know.
It's so encouraging to hear you say that, you know, because how I see it, what you're talking about, that's a real art of one, being able to relay that information to athletes or other people, but two, the art of knowing yourself. And it's so important. You know, you mentioned your trauma, like everyone has a trauma, everyone, but without awareness of that, and it's not to hang around in that, but it's to aware, well, okay, there are things in my that I can't even see that are affecting how I interact with myself, my family, the athletes I work with. And so like it's just so like, and so that's why I feel that's the first place to start. Like we could take personal responsibility of ourselves and our interactions to get to know ourselves more, which then will change our thoughts, feelings, and actions that affect other people. And I think the second kind of, which it's just, it has to start with there, I think. But also, you know, like our sporting environments, you know, I truly believe that we call our environments high performance, yet most environments requires either us or other people to hold back in some form. And Callum Walsh, I mentioned him quite a lot because I really enjoy his work, and he's his doctorate at the moment, but he'll talk about self-preservation, because particularly in soccer, the idea, but you know, it's in all realms of professional sport, like the idea of insecurity over job security, whether it's competition between roles, and so it kind of forces people inwards and to preserve their place, so they sound good or they sound intelligent or they're the best cut, whatever it is. And so kind of really bring it into, like, you know, through your female lens, what do you see, if anything at all, you know, as a female practitioner or as just a female, as a woman in this world, in a predominantly male culture, that maybe male coaches don't see about themselves or about the environment, if at all, but just kind of through your lens, what do you see?
Yeah, I think you just open a can of worms there in terms of, because it just makes me, you know, I keep going back to this idea of the job, like you said, a lot of practitioners will, you know, make specific decisions or, you know, be a different person in order to kind of save their jobs. And I think that's one thing that I really, really wanted to work in myself as a practitioner since I started. I'm like, I want to be able to be the most authentic self that I could be. So I'm not in that position of actually having to kind of walk on eggshells
Yes. Yeah.
just for the sake of like the role. So I kind of, and I still try to do that to build a sustainable future for myself, with a diverse roles, like with that, a huge diversity of roles. Um, so then when I'm in a role, I'm not afraid to say, this is not right. This is, and I did that with, in Brazil, like I put my foot down for a lot of things where I would sit in meetings and like, we're not going to get out of this meeting until we actually have an action plan for this because this is not right. And I was not afraid to do that because if I would lose my job, well, I did lose my job, and it's like it's fine. But I'm actually doing everything I believe in. So I think, and plus, even if you don't have that backup, you don't want to be working for an institution that you don't, it doesn't hear your your values or what you believe in. And that's what I think it kind of ties quite well with the female thing that you just mentioned. And I think when I started as a coach, I think that because of society putting those labels in terms of like it's always hard for females, which I think it is. I think in a lot of ways there's a lot of discrimination, and we're still far behind. But it is very easy as a female coach to rely on that to kind of almost subconsciously, when you're in a role, you're already thinking, if they don't hear me out here, that's because I'm a female coach. That's because they're and I got into that trap when I was at Orlando Pride. And I almost quit. But then I was like, wait a minute, am I actually going within and kind of like inside and say, am I doing the best that I can to be assertive, to actually put my foot down and say, this is what I believe in? And then once I did that, then I realized it was not because I was a female coach. It was because I was just like not being able to stand on my ground and not being assertive to what. And if you don't do that, and if you don't put your foot down and actually go, this is how I think it should be. Even when you don't think you're experienced enough or know what you're doing, but sometimes you gotta do it to
Yeah.
learn, to be
Yes.
able to have somebody saying to you, yeah, look at what you just did. Didn't work, did it? I'm like, yeah, but you know what? I thought it would. That's fine. We learn.
Right.
But being in an environment that can support you to do that, to be able to do that, that's important.
Yeah.
And if you're not in an environment that actually allows you to, first of all, be your like be the expert that you are in your
Yep.
field and just resist to everything you say, or they don't, support you in actually going big and making huge mistakes, then I would rather not be in that place. So I think that's kind of my mentality. When I go to roles, I completely remove that female coach thing,
Great. Great. Great.
because I think that is very easy to rely on that. I'm
Yeah.
not saying that it doesn't happen. I
Yeah.
have a lot of colleagues that have been through, some stuff that is like, okay, that's not fair. That's not good enough. But I think you always have to take a step back and first kind of go through your list and like, okay, am I doing everything I can to be assertive, to actually stand on my ground? And if I'm doing that and I'm still, then it's time to move on. You don't want to be in that place. You just want
Right.
to, but um I try to, especially with my mentees, like the
Yeah.
coaches they're just starting, I try to just to tell them, like believe in what you want to do. And I think it comes also with the copy and paste thing that a lot of practitioners, young practitioners, and I was like that. Whereas like I never believed in myself enough in the beginning to actually create my own philosophy and my own
Right.
strategy. Because I
Right.
think that's what happens when you're insecure
Yes.
and you're trying to do that, then it's very hard for you to get the trust, or
Hmm.
because people sense that, right?
Yeah. Right.
But
Right.
yeah, so I think that's definitely definitely a bigger issue.
That great. I mean, on that self-worth thing, that's low self-confidence, that affected me through much of my career. Like just inability, not inability, I did it, but just had that fear around saying my philosophy or whatever it was. And I think kind of what stood out to me from what you just said is empowerment, again, of empowerment of yourself, to let go of labels, and empowerment of yourself. And you mentioned, your authentic, your strong self, your values, like connected to them. And I think how another way I see that, kind of once we're connected to who our true values, and then to live aligned to them, that kind of gives us the deeper yes, what you've described. Like, and all I mean by that is it's easy to say, actually, this environment's not for me, or no, or kind of you need to make changes when you're anchored to your deeper yes, for your values, for example, what you truly believe in. And what you sound, what's enabled you to be that strong in yourself? Kind of, is there anything that has helped you connect to that, just step into your empowerment, to be connected to what you truly believe? Because it sounds like you really, you embody that so much.
Yeah, I think a lot of it took me a lot of patience to go through very unfair situations in the past with like jobs where
Right.
I was like, this is not right. This is not right. To the point that it would take my mental health and physical health.
Yeah.
And then I was like, you know what? I have nothing to lose here, and I cannot drain my energy no more than this. And this is enough. And I think that's where I'm like, I'm not gonna let external things or people to dictate what my worth is. And to also be able to be in a position that I could do that and inspire other people to do that similarly, because I saw a lot of cultures, team cultures or whatever, where it is completely okay to go through that unfairness and nobody talks about it. Nobody actually steps up and say, guys, this is not right. And that's why it's been like that. And I think we say that in as a female coach, and I'll bring this a little bit in terms of your value, your financial value. When you go in and you're gonna speak at a place, and being okay saying, this is my speaker fee. And then people sometimes go, and then your male counterparts that might be kind of as successful as you, but then they are okay like asking for this. And if you ask for this similar, it's almost like, who do you think you are? So it was almost for me to kind of get into a position where, all right, if I push this, I'll try to create a cultural change in that environment. If people comes along and do the same. But if people don't do it, then it's always going to be that. And I try it, then it's fine. But I think it's a lot of the things that happens in our industry, and that's like poor pay or kind of long hours. It's because we allow this to happen. And everybody thinks it's okay. It's normal until somebody comes and say, no, it's not. And then we're changing the narrative, and then we're changing kind of where things are. And again, if you do that and they say no, then move on. Like it's not. But of course, you have to build something, a foundation, so you're able to do that financially. Unfortunately, that's part of the puzzle. But when you do, then I think that's where you have the power to kind of push those standards. And I try to do that as a female coach, as just a coach, to kind of put my foot on the ground and say, no, like, this is not good enough. Like, and if this needs to be changed. And it takes a while for me it took definitely me a while to get confident and actually being okay doing that. But I will always fight for what is right, and I think that's something that hopefully I'll keep carrying that with me.
Yeah, you truly embody it from where I see, and you're the second person I've had on Pierre Wenham Flat I've interviewed recently, and he's talking about a very similar thing. Like creating some kind of financial diversity in your financial income, not. The way he's talking about it, not to work a full-time job, then go and do this and go and do that, but like try and kind of carve out multiple income streams. So then it's exactly what you're saying. You then have the security and the option, the freedom, I suppose, a better option, the freedom to then choose where you want to be, rather than the sense of a position of kind of victimhood or trapped in a position. You'll then have the options to, I don't think it has to be complicated. I don't think that has to be working 60 or 70 hours a week. I think it's just diversity in your income. And I think your model of your career, your practitioner career, is one I think could be emulated a far more, have lots of diversity and what it sounds like as well. But what's allowed you to have that diversity is not to be attached to a certain, we've all got identity, but not to be so attached to a club or a thing. You're kind of more fluid with that, and you can, and then two things you mentioned, I'm going to bring back to, like, first of all, a supportive environment. What, not necessarily labeling the environments, but what traits or what components make up a supportive environment, professional environment for you? So when you go into a team organization, what have you found to be the really important pillars within that?
I think where everybody has kind of the same what do I kind of the same journey, that wants to get to the same place that you want, and there's like egos removed, that there's collaboration, there is kind of like a common language, a huge important part, I think, common language, and an environment that has a direction, that knows where they're going, and there's values attached to that.
Right.
Not just results, just not based on results, but also kind of a strategy where your voice is heard and it's valued, and there's feedback. There's always constant feedback, debrief systems to make sure it's better than the one before, and that you can do your job, that you can actually use your expertise for what it's for. But at the same time, being able to also kind of pick each other's brain to kind of learn with each other. So like for me as a performance coach, being able to sit with a head coach and kind of like, okay, how can we blend our worlds together in order to bring this, and I think it's incredible when that happens, because you become more motivated as a practitioner and as a person, and it's very refreshing to be in an environment like that. And I think that's what makes a huge difference. And I felt that when I just walked in the Irish national team environment, is just so supportive and so amazing how people, know where they're going, and it's where you can really be yourself, and you're not afraid to be yourself and use your expertise, and that's the key.
That's what it sounds like you're describing. Really, you're walking into that environment, it's that feeling you're picking up on. Now they're probably, and just to summarize what you said, like, so values, like there's a clear alignment with values between practitioners, between the organization, autonomy of your role, and element of growth, like idea of growth mindset. We all think we're growth mindset, but kind of when, certainly in my world, like you realize, like, oh, I'm growth in this area but not an area, and it's really just lifting the lid on that and trying to be like, let's just talk, have an open discussion, rather than defending our story. And a way into that would be, am I trying to be effective in this situation, or am I trying to be right? Am I trying to defend my stance, or am I trying to be effective within this environment?
Exactly.
And then blending ideas, having that open communication between different levels, rather than a hierarchical system, which of course head manager, but it's just everyone's in this journey, as you described, towards a unified outcome.
Exactly.
As I come. Exactly. You said some great things. You mentioned the mentorship and the coaches that you do lead, because you do run a mentorship as well as coaching athletes. And I suppose, like, from the non-technical side of things, what do you feel? What are the kind of the non-technical elements that you encourage the people you mentor and coach young coaches, what are the type of non-technical skills that you feel are crucial and that you try and whether educate or to try and make them aware to develop in themselves?
Yeah, I think to develop and find that human
Right,
side
right.
of them, and like to actually being able for them to develop that self-awareness, to develop that self-regulation, to understand that the confidence will come, to develop their own philosophy. And I think that's the biggest thing, because it comes with a very impatient mindset, and I was like that too, where like, just tell me exactly what I need to do in this situation. And sometimes you just gotta like get the principles and figure it out how to put those principles in your own environment. So the first thing that I ask my mentees is about their strategy, is about their reflection timeline, where to try to get them to find that really purpose. And it's hard, because a lot of the, like, if you see so many people doing that, like, find your values, find your
Right.
purpose, but to embody that, it's something so hard
Yeah.
that you have to be able to go through that yourself, so then you're able to teach it. And I think that's where it's hard, especially when you do those like cultural things with your company or with your team, that it's like, what is your values? And like, it was never, I could never understand them until I actually
Yeah.
was like, had the aha moment, like I told you this year, and like, oh, okay, now this is exactly what fuels my fire, and now I understand what my values are. So how do I get them to do that, and to have that mindset where it's like, okay, you need to connect to yourself a little bit more in order for you to actually embody that. Until then, it's going to be very hard for you to understand how to really merge those two worlds together.
Yes.
So I think it's just kind of understanding that things are not as black and white as we learn in school, and
Yeah.
kind
Yeah.
of teaching that, like, the reality of being in sports, the reality of in the chaos of it,
Mm-hmm.
and that you just have to embrace it.
Yeah.
You can't resist. You just have to ride the waves and understand that you're going to learn something every day, and you just got to keep pushing.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's way more than the physical side. I think it's way more important than the reps and the volume
Mm.
and the intensity, all that stuff.
For sure. And I think, what I'd add to that is, it's one thing to know your values, but, and like you said, the challenge is to how do you live aligned to those
Yeah.
values? And I think part of that process in my journey anyway has been to realize notice when I'm completely out of alignment with them. Because that's feedback, like, oh man, what am I
Mm.
doing? Whatever that's in my personal life or my professional life, whatever. And it just for me, it's allowed this merging of like, oh, the intention versus the actual how I'm actually the action that I'm living in my life is come
Mm.
closer and closer just through allowing myself to make mistakes. It's
Exactly.
um
And it's hard to get to that point, but once you
yeah.
get it, then it's a little bit easier, and it's easier for you to teach that too.
Yes.
But yeah.
Yes. Last question, and it's a big one as well. And I what do you see? What stood out for me from our conversation so far is empowerment, taking personal responsibility, getting clear with yourself, getting to know yourself, doing the inner work with the full understanding that's just a lifelong process. It's not, there's no outcome. It's this shedding of layers. That's how I see it. But from the when you're looking, if you turn the focus at elite environments, the culture of sport, what do you think needs changing? What if you to pick out one or two things? What do you see as the obvious thing that needs, as a collective, need to start looking at to begin to initiate that change?
Well, I think that building self-awareness and
Right.
kind
Yeah.
of
Great.
self-regulation tools in athletes, because if you talk about women's football, and I've seen this very close in the World Cup, it's very overwhelming, the amount of stuff that the media, the pressure, sponsorships, and on top of everything that a player has to deal with, and social media, all that stuff. And I feel like if players don't develop those skills, they're just going to burn out. Like I almost burn out as a coach. They can burn out as a player. So I think as practitioners that have been through that kind of, they are going through that kind of developing that self-awareness, and I'm in that path for sure. I'm not an expert in it. It's very hard for me at the moment, but at least if we can help them develop those tools where they're able to do the small things to kind of disconnect from the world a little bit, and to be able to have that kind of space, mind space, where they can actually wake up the next day and be the best version of themselves. Because we all know once our battery is drained in terms of mental or stress, all that stuff, I mean, you can be the best coach and teach the best, coach the best team in the world and stuff like that. It's not gonna happen. And so I think that definitely being able to develop that self-awareness, self-regulation skills, I think as a practitioner and as athletes, I think that's where we need to go, because otherwise we're just gonna continue to be stuck in methods and kind of, this is how it's supposed to be in black and white and all that stuff, and we're gonna keep forgetting the bigger picture, and the world's gonna keep going, and we're gonna get stuck in the future again and then not enjoy the process. So easier said than done, but I think that's definitely something that I would foresee that we definitely to keep building.
I agree completely. I think, like we're in the business of neurophysiological adaptation, helping athletes to be their best, and kind of the simple things, if practitioners are not sleeping well, if they're not eating well, if they're not moving well, if their nervous system is amped all the time, like just simple things like that, you just not going to be showing up as yourself, whatever that may be. But they are baked into the society. Thank you so much, Ivi. Is there anything else that you've thought about that you want to share? Don't worry if there isn't anything else you want to say, and if not, don't worry.
No, I think we've we got everything. Of course, like you mentioned, my mentorships, of course, this year has been quite crazy because I haven't stopped from role after roles, but I still have my group mentorship going.
How does that run?
It's already full for this year, but I'm opening a new cohort in February. And
this will go out in January 2024.
Oh, perfect. So February, that's when the new cohort starts, and along with that mentorship, everybody will have access to my roadmap course, which is kind of like it pretty much, I put everything that I've learned the last few years into a course in terms of the human side of things, the physiology, and more the applied setting. But yeah, it's a work in progress, but it's been a good journey so far.
Great. And so I'll put your Twitter handle and your Instagram and your website. It's just below this podcast. So if you're really interested in that and you want to check out Ivi, then just see the links below. And thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It's been a great chat.
Thank you for listening to this episode. I just want to remind you, if you did enjoy it, if you're taking some really good takeaways from this podcast already, I want to encourage you, invite you to leave a review on Spotify or iTunes. Your action of doing that is directly going to help this podcast reach more practitioners that need it.